What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Hope everyone's having a fantastic week thus far. A little Wednesday live stream. I had a little bit of time to spare today. Been knocking out a bunch of stuff, but I had some additional questions left over from our mailbag over at Steelers Now. Just kind of wanted to jump on here. It's been a while since I went live on the channel. Really haven't gotten to interact with you guys as much as I really would prefer to. So, I'm just kind of gonna go through some Q&A type of stuff. Just before we get started, if you guys would just hit that like button for me, it's greatly appreciated. Feel free to drop any and all questions, Steelers, NFL draft, whatever you guys got in the chat, and I'll kind of get to those as many as possible in the time that I've got to kind of do this. So just in the meantime, I'm going to kind of run through just some questions that you guys sent in on Twitter, but I can bounce back and forth between like the live chat and then on Twitter. But there was just a lot of stuff, man, that people send in, and I'm really appreciative anytime I ask for questions on Twitter for like the mailbags and stuff. You guys all like really bring it, and I really appreciate that. So I want to kind of just get to those to some of those things that didn't make the article. To be honest with you, there were so many good ones, but from Centauri, again, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but which cornerback pairings work best for their dime looks when everyone is healthy, and what do you do to address the CB2 spot moving forward? So this is really interesting. I think a lot of this stems from, Cam Sutton really heavily outsnapped Beanie Bishop in that game against the Bengals. I have a couple theories on why, but I think Tomlin really answered it pretty directly in his press conference. I think they just wanted to be pretty multiple on the back end and kind of do a lot of some of their like funkier kind of coverage rotation stuff. And I think that they just trust Sutton to do more of that right now than a guy like Beanie Bishop in terms of like disguising. Sutton's a guy who's like used to kind of rotating back to kind of the safety position and some of those looks. And I just think he gives them a little bit of flexibility there. The problem is, and like if you guys have seen I've posted some stuff on Twitter, but if you guys have like seen the film, Sutton can't really run anymore. And that's kind of like, it's kind of crazy to me because I really don't remember him being like, he was never like the fastest guy in the world. He kind of always kind of won more with like from the neck up than anything else. But man, like just watching him try to run with guys now, and he's only 30 years old. I mean, I know some guys hit that 30-year-old mark and kind of fall off a cliff athletically. Corner is not a position where guys play a really long time, but he just looks like he can't really run anymore. And I'm not sure if like there could be an injury that's not being discussed. I don't know. I just think that like man coverage with him in the lineup right now is just really difficult. Like I just don't see how you could really do it without like, making sure that you get him in a really advantageous matchup. Maybe he can match up with some tight ends for you. He did that a little bit early in his career. So I think if you're playing a lot of zone and doing some things like that, he could still be kind of an asset for you. Bishop, really still like a pretty unproven player. Like we don't have a huge sample size of like what he really brings to the table. I do think like he's probably a better man coverage player right now than Sutton, just because like I think he has like more juice, more bounce in his step. But I think the best combination of like what to go forward with, it's kind of interesting because like, Trice kind of started the season as the dime linebacker. He hasn't really been able to stay healthy throughout much of his career, but like really with the Steelers too. I mean, he's only played like a couple handful of snaps. So we have no sample size to go off of with that. The dime packages and things like that, they're going to be more prevalent against some certain matchups. So it kind of just, I guess my point is that it's probably gonna be like a mix and match type of thing, depending on opponent. Like what type of personnel, what type of skill sets do those teams have? Do you want to go get into like more man? Do you want to go get into more zone looks? I think it's really gonna depend on like that type of stuff for me in terms of who's gonna play. I would love for them to finally address the slot cornerback position, like in the actual draft. And that would be fantastic for me personally, but we'll see if that actually happens. It's been something I've been saying for years, really since like Hilton went to Cincinnati, and like they just haven't done it. Like not only have they not done it like with a premium pick, they just haven't done it at all. So it just hasn't been a really big priority for them. So how do you address the slack or the CB2 spot moving forward? I mean, I'm not against bringing Dante Jackson back. I think Dante Jackson is kind of like a funny player to discuss on Twitter because I think a lot of kind of like Steeler fans, or maybe like if you're just looking at like the Pro Football Focus like coverage numbers, and you guys know like how I feel about that stuff. I just it's not my vibe, but I think if you're just watching like the broadcast angle, it seems like Jackson's having like a great year. He's got 5 interceptions, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that. I mean, catching the freaking ball, even off these tip balls and things like that, is half the battle for these cornerbacks. And I don't want to like say that those are like bad things, because they're definitely not, right? But I think like when you actually look at like the film on a play-by-play basis, I think that Jackson's pretty much the player he's always been in Carolina, which is like he's kind of just like a baseline CB2, like probably really good CB3 type of player. I don't necessarily hate bringing him back to the Berg, though. I mean, they had him take a pay cut before the season. I think his base salary was reduced to $6 million. Like, if he wants to play for $6 million, cool. Like, I mean, he can come back with that. I don't necessarily think he's been so bad that like you just can't run it back with him. And I also don't think he's been so good that like you need to prioritize this guy as like, okay, this is our number one priority going into free agency. We got to make sure that we bring him back. No one's going to outbid us. That's just not how I feel about that. So that's kind of my stuff with that. I think Jackson's a limited player, but I do think like the speed on the outside has been nice. Like they haven't been getting bombed over the top, which is good. Even though like I still think he has limitations as a player, obviously. So Gino, appreciate you. Appreciate the membership as well. Jacob, what's good? Appreciate you joining us. Zon, I'm saying that wrong. Finally catching a live stream. Yeah, I know the live streams are difficult because I work third shift. I work multiple jobs, so I'm kind of like up throughout the day a lot as well. It's kind of difficult for me to like schedule these things in advance just because like my schedule is just so hectic, man. Like with my kids and just everything I got going on. I know that things are like that for you guys too. You guys got other stuff to do than catch me on YouTube. So, but I really do enjoy doing this, especially like with the community. We've kind of built to get on here, some talk ball, just kind of laid back type of format. What's good, Sean? My day's been great, man. Hopefully yours is as well. Like I said, you guys could continue. We got more and more people rolling in here. Continue to drop your questions in the chat. I'm just going to kind of go through some stuff that I kind of got bookmarked as far as things I wanted to hit on. Nikki, she always is supporting a lot of my content on Twitter, a lot of stuff on here as well. So I really appreciate that. How do you think we end up finishing in the conference? I mean, the 3 seed is wide open, right? For the Steelers for the taking. To be honest with you, like when I look at the AFC, I just don't think Houston's very good, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I think their offensive line is so bad that it's really cratered a lot of what they could do offensively. I think Stroud has regressed because of like the amount of stress that they're putting on his plate. And it's just not really fair from a young quarterback's perspective to put that much on his plate. And like the interior of the offensive line, they can't pick up stunts. I think their offensive line is really going to be like a huge detriment to them in the playoffs. And it's difficult they may not even win the AFC South at this point. I mean, I think they probably will just because the division doesn't have really anyone else as like true contenders. Maybe the Colts get up there. But I think the Texans are probably going to finish as the 4th seed. Really, it just comes down to like, can the Steelers catch Kansas City? Can they catch Buffalo? The good thing about the Kansas City thing is like Kansas City has played a lot of close games this year. They haven't looked like overwhelmingly impressive. You still have to count them, in my opinion, as like true Super Bowl contenders. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have Andy Reid. It's really like as simple as that to me. Like we saw this kind of same thing last year, although the defense did play better last year than I think people realize, and they haven't been as good, I think, as I probably expected them to be. At least to kind of uplift an offense that is kind of like uninspiring at times, to be honest with you. But they kind of waltzed into the playoffs last year and they still, took it all the way. But Buffalo to me is the best team in the conference. I've kind of said that for probably about 6 weeks now. I mean, other than that, I think it was the Houston game where like Josh Allen kind of lost his mind a little bit early in the season. I just think that what Buffalo can do to you, like in the trenches, like they have a power run game. I think Allen is playing like some of the best ball of his career. Of course, we've seen up close and personal just kind of like what he can do in a playoff setting. He kind of really take over games. McDermott's always like one of the best defensive minds in the sport. Even like when they don't necessarily have guys healthy or don't have like the most talented roster on paper, he always seems to keep them in the mix. They don't play Buffalo, so it's going to be kind of tough. Like Buffalo's schedule down the stretch is like a cakewalk, at least from what I remember of it. But I think the division is very much on the line. I mean, they've got a 2.5 game lead right now in Baltimore. They still have to play them again. The big thing with that is like if they beat Baltimore, they're going to win the North. I mean, they're definitely going to make playoffs. They're going to win the North, though, in my opinion, if they beat Baltimore, because then you would basically have like a 3-game lead, even if you feel like you're probably not going to beat, if it's Kansas City, if it's Philly, and we'll find out a lot about this team when they go up against those type of matchups, because I think both of those teams are real Super Bowl contenders in playoff with real playoff aspirations. But I think finishing third in the conference is absolutely a real thing, So I think that's kind of what the goal needs to be. Getting a home playoff game would be absolutely massive and something I'd be really looking forward to. So I'm kind of going to bounce back into the live chat right now, try to pick up some questions. How do you feel about Kyron Lacy from LSU with Pickens? I have seen Lacy play live. I have not studied him yet. I'm assuming that he's draft eligible because you're not the first person to ask me about him. Haven't studied him. I know he popped a lot for me last year when I was watching Neighbors and those guys at LSU. Pretty dynamic passing offense over there. I mean, LSU always seems to produce pretty good players. I think Lacey, for me, he moves really well for his size. I felt like he was getting a decent amount of separation in the games that I was watching last year, but I haven't actually like scouted him yet, so I couldn't give you like a full breakdown of like what I feel like of his game. But this is a good question. Do you see a realistic X or Z in the draft that fits with GP or Russ? Yeah, so this actually goes with another question that I was going to highlight, and I'll just kind of read the question and then kind of just we can talk receivers real quick for the draft. But my guy Palomalu said, what mid to end of the first round receiver options are there for the Steelers? Not particularly strong class, but looking to complement Pickens. Been looking at Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State recently. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what I think it's going to be very interesting to see where they go from a skill set perspective, because I think it could go a number of different directions. Like Paul, a lot of people have been talking about Egbuka really since the summer. He's a guy that's been on the NFL radar for a long time. He broke out as a freshman, so these guys seem to always have a lot of hype. Abuka's probably going to be there where the Steelers are going to be picking. I think he's a really tough player, man. Like technically sound route runner, really understands like the nuances of the position. Like you'll see some shoulder fakes. He understands how to like set up guys at the break point. Understands how to use his eyes to get open too. I like that. Double moves, things like that. We'll go over the middle. Really tough. But he's only played in the slot. So like that's the other thing about this kind of discussion is like, what you're asking is like, do you see like an X or a Z type that can fit really well with what Pickens brings to the table? A lot of these guys have only really played inside. Not to say like that's always a detriment, saying like you can't play them outside in the league. Like you've got to try to like parse out the reps and the traits that are going to translate to the boundary in the NFL. It's just really difficult because there's just not a lot to go off of from the film. And kind of same thing could be said about Luther Burden from Missouri. His production was absolutely incredible last year. I mean, he was breaking. He was like the best receiver statistically last season. His production's way down this year. I haven't actually watched the All-22 of this year at all to see what happened. I watched him over the summer. I thought he was a really intriguing prospect to me, just because he's really, really good after the catch, man. Like even this year, like when his production's been down, like the missed tackles forced and like the elusiveness, like is still like off the charts. I mean, this dude like never goes down on first contact. He's really compactly built. Like he's a smaller dude, but like I think he's really strong in his lower half. Like will run through tackles, has really good balance. Just has a really good feel for like how to make plays after the catch. That's where most of his production, I feel like, comes from, with the slot fades kind of worked in there as well. But again, like this is another guy that's played 85% of his snaps in the slot. It's just really tough because like you look at the Steelers like roster right now, you got Pickens on the outside. We think that he's going to be here, right? He's going to be in the equation. Let's just say that. Your other guys that are going to be back next year. Calvin Austin has been impressive, probably better than I would have even anticipated in the slot this season. Like some of the things that he can do as a speed slot, he's doing basically the things that I thought Roman Wilson could do for this team in this offense. To me, him and Roman Wilson are like very similar, like would feel very similar roles in this offense. So it's almost like a repetitive skill set in a way, even though it's not like a 1-to-1, but like they're both slot receivers. Like you don't really want either one of those guys playing outside. Like Calvin did it in college, but he's 5'7". Even in the league, like this year, like when they have put him outside, he hasn't been productive. And then Roman like didn't play outside at all in college, doesn't really have any reps on the ball. So it's like I don't really feel confident with either one of those guys going outside. So then I think you look at like other options in the draft as far as like trying to get somebody, maybe in that first round range. Isaiah Bond from Texas is a guy. He's kind of a like this like lean jitterbug type player. He almost reminds me a little bit of like Zay Flowers, like super fast, but really good with the ball in his hands. But again, like he's 175 pounds. Do you really want to roster or I think he's like actually like listed like 182, something like that. But do you really want to roster 3 guys out of your top 4 receivers that are 180 pounds? I just don't think that that's the ideal situation for them. I don't know. 2 guys I will highlight, Kyle Manor from Stanford. He was a guy that I really liked over the summer for the Steelers. I don't know if he's actually going to go in the first round. Dane Brugler from The Athletic does a lot of great draft stuff, has actually said that he's probably going back to school. But he's a bigger bodied receiver, contested catch guy. He torched Travis Hunter last year. That was like kind of like his, like, I want to say like coming out performance a little bit. Another guy that I will mention, Savion Williams from TCU. I have only watched, because I'm actually in the process of getting more, but I only have one game of All-22 and I've watched him. I think I'm going to be higher on him than consensus. So that's a name that, like, if you're like a draft fanatic and you're in here and you have some spare time throughout the rest of your week, go look up Savion Williams for TCU. All right, let's see what else we got to chat. What D line guys do you like for Pittsburgh? I think I would be intrigued. Like, say, like if they went like D line on like day two. I mean, I think that Tyleik Williams from Ohio State is a guy that I liked a decent amount over the summer. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss has actually kind of came into his own. Like he's a like former 5-star guy. He was like a really top tier recruit. Transferred this year. Like he's been pretty solid. I haven't actually watched the tape on him, but I've seen them play live a couple times over the past like month or so, and like he's kind of stood out to me. So he's a guy who seems like his stock is kind of on the rise. There is like, I mean, this is a pretty solid interior defensive line class. The guy that I probably like the most and have liked the most, he's like really, really high on my board. I think he's high on pretty much everybody's board. It's Mason Graham from Michigan. So, but he's not going to be there when the Steelers are there. I think Mason Graham should be a top 5 pick in this class, which just to be completely honest with you guys, and it kind of seems like a bummer because it's kind of depressing me whenever I've said this like off the record and like DMs with people that I talk ball with on Twitter and like group messages and stuff. I just don't think that this draft class like really stacks up as well as like last year. Like last year, I just loved the class. Like there were so many guys in the first round that I was just like, oh my God, if we could get our hands on this guy. This year, it's not quite as like that. Like I think certain position groups are fine. I think that the bad draft classes typically are the ones where like most people aren't necessarily very excited about the quarterback position. That's kind of true with this one, but I think just overall, man, I'm just not really like just haven't really found as many guys that I'm like ready to kind of like bang the table or like really dive into the film on this yet. Is this I'm guessing this is your question. Hopefully, I didn't see your tweet. I'm sorry, but I'd say Russ's fair value is 45, put him as 12 ranked QB. So this is in response to like, I was talking about it a little bit on Twitter. I think people are, which we can have kind of the Russ conversation because that's another question that I kind of wrote down for this. Like, what do I think the Steelers will do with Russ? Like, what happens in the offseason? Obviously, he's an impending free agent. To me, like Russ has played at the level or probably above the level that even the Steelers could have probably hoped for, right? Like he's been legitimately solid. Like it's been a little bit volatile. But at the end of the day, like this has been a good experience for the Steelers. Like, I mean, I would say great experience based on what they're actually paying him, like on the cap this year. And they got him for pennies just because of like what happened with Denver and like them only having to basically pay him the veteran minimum, all that stuff. It's been a very good experience. Like the Steelers have got good quarterback play from him and Justin. Everything's worked out great. Now, next season is going to be a little bit of a different dynamic because you're going to have to actually pay him money and something tangible on the salary cap. The Steelers right now have about $60 million in salary cap space heading into next year. Now, that number, like at this time of the year, can like really fluctuate. They've got tons of stuff they can do. I mean, like we know Cole Holcomb, Preston Smith, those guys are not going to be back, at least at the cap numbers that they're going to be on. Like you take those cap numbers out, like that number bumps up like 20 more million. Got some extensions, got some free agents that you probably got to make decisions on beyond Russ, but like Russ will be the number one priority. Like if he continues to play this way throughout the end of the season, as soon as the season ends, like that will be what they focus the majority of their attention to. And like what that means financially is like, I think if you look around the landscape at the quarterback position, really the cheapest starter in the NFL right now is Baker Mayfield. Like if we're talking, let's exclude rookies, guys that are like bridge type quarterbacks. I'm not like counting like Sam Darnold. Like Russ isn't in that conversation because if you're signing him back for next year, like you're committing to him as the quarterback for at least the like immediate future, right? Baker is like the cheapest contract in the NFL. He got $33 million per season. Like that's kind of the baseline of the quarterback market. Russ this year, like for his salary, for what Denver's paying him, what the Steelers are paying him, is making 40. So like, could he take a little bit of a discount and get down to that 33 million? Absolutely. I think so. Could he take an even more of a discount? Like I have no connection with Russ. I've only spoken to him a couple times. Don't have any idea of what his like financial motivations are. Would it be great if he took like 25 million or something like that, took a really team friendly deal to like add more talent around him? Sure. You'll never hear me expect or lobby for players to take less than their market value. And the market value says that he should get more than 33 million per season. That's just my opinion. So actually that's not really an opinion. That's just a fact, to be honest with you. You just look at the NFL market, how it works. So Russ is going to get paid. He'll be the number one. He'll be the number one priority for them. He could get way more than 33 million, depending on how he finishes. The biggest thing that I care about, like I don't really get as much of my feelings about contracts when you're paying good players. If Russ continues to play, if he continues to play at a high level, like plays like a good player and wins the Steelers a playoff game, pay him his market value. Obviously, guaranteed money and things like that and like term obviously matter when you're talking about a 36, 37-year-old. That's no longer like in the prime of his career. But I trust the Steelers are going to be smart about these negotiations. Like Khan doesn't strike me, and I don't think there's any reason to believe that he's going to be somebody that's going to throw an outrageous number out just to make sure that he doesn't like escape the building or anything like that. This is not how he's operated. If anything, I think Khan should have been more aggressive this offseason with the money that they had. But I'm not going to go down that rant. So, Noah, love the work. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, Bobby on to preview Arthur Smith's scheme this year. Any chance you could have him on again to evaluate how it's gone this far? Potentially. I actually talked to Bobby a couple weeks ago. That's a good idea, though. Maybe we do something like that. That probably won't be like an in-season thing for me, just for like time constraints. But like we could potentially run that back in the off season for sure. I always like these type of ideas are always kind of just in my notes section on my iPhone, just because it's really hard. Like if you guys don't know, and I'm not one to complain because like this is just a hobby for me, and like I legitimately enjoy a lot of the stuff that we do on the channel. But it's really hard to produce like YouTube content in general over the summer, like for football, because there's just not going on. There's not a lot of interest. There's not a lot of traffic. Analytics like just tanks a lot of your videos. So like trying to be really creative and come up with good content for your audience is really difficult. So like this type of stuff is more suited for like that type of environment. But I would like to have Bobby on for sure. There's actually a couple guys that I had on this year that I want to have on again. I'll probably have Marcus from TDL back on to talk about some draft prospects. We've been talking about hooking up with that. Brandon Thorne, like we've already talked about coming on or doing some stuff like either for the draft or just to kind of review like the progress of some of the Steelers young offensive linemen. I know you guys, a lot of you guys know Brandon, like Brandon. It seemed like that video was pretty well received. So those are things that I would absolutely like to do. But they're more like probably like off-season-ish type of things more than anything else. He's not taking 30 if I go. It's really just speculation at this point. I think that people are going to be upset. Some people that don't really follow the league in general or on a larger scale are going to be surprised by how much it may cost to keep him. Now, again, like also like I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Like we're still working with a small sample size. We got a lot of games to go. We got 5 regular season games and a playoff game. Things could change drastically in that time frame. I'm just saying, like, if he continues to play well, that's kind of what you're looking at. My guy Tyler, Sebastian Castro. Yeah, man. I've seen a lot of people saying, like, I know like Castro is kind of like almost like a safety type, but Castro would be a guy to me that like you could probably get in like the mid rounds or something like that. Maybe like 3rd, 4th, 5th round. That kind of feels like the right value for him. But he's a really smart player. I actually watched his game against Abuka this season. He's pretty solid. He had some really good moments. He had a really nice interception in that game as well. Life is a CB2 stuff. Yeah. I mean, there's this, like, I talk about it all the time, kind of on Twitter, like kind of as a bit, but teach your kids how to backpedal, man. We got a lot more receivers than we do cornerbacks. That's just it. And that just is what it is. My guy Busy, what do you think the draft order will be? I mean, it's all relative to like what's available, right? Like I'm always like kind of a guy that thinks of the draft in terms of you take best player available at a position of need. So like you don't want to like pigeonhole yourself in. So like we have to take a quarterback, we have to take a wide receiver. Like quarterback's actually a little bit different, but we have to take a wide receiver in the first round. Like I don't necessarily love doing that. I think in the first round, to me, I think the most likely positions are probably wide receiver. I would say defensive line, and I would say cornerback. Those would be the 3 that I would kind of highlight in terms of like first round. And then on day 2, I would expect them to take a running back just because I don't think that Najee Harris is going to be back. I know a lot of people want to bring him back. I like Najee. I think he's a great I think he's a really fun player to watch. I think he's a good, solid running back. I just think that like if they didn't want to pay him the $6 million for next year on his 5th-year option, I don't know that there's been a significant difference in the way that he's ran this season. And that's not to say he hasn't had his good moments, because he absolutely has. I don't think that there's anything that makes me think that he should get significantly more than that. Like he'll get more than $6 million on the open market is basically what I'm trying to say. And if they didn't want to do that for the 5th-year option, why would they? Like what's changed, I guess, in that time frame? And obviously the franchise tag's not an option for that because McCaffrey's salary is just so insane that it kind of balloons that entire conversation. But Get to one more here, and then I kind of want to. Man, you guys are cooking with questions. Man, y'all are doing great, man. I appreciate y'all. How do we feel about Mike Williams? I mean, when we recapped the Williams trade, I said that it was a little rich for my blood just because there wasn't anything on tape this season that really said that like this guy was going to come in and play like much different than he had against the Jets. I mean, he kind of just is what he is. He's not been really involved in the offense. I don't really necessarily. I mean, he's only playing about 25% of the snaps right now. I don't know. I don't really have a lot of thoughts on it. I mean, he's not necessarily it's not like he's popping on tape and like getting open. And I'm like, this dude needs more touches. It's not been a situation like that. Could they throw him some 50-50 balls, contested catches? Like, I think so. I'd probably like to see him in those situations more than the other guys they got on the roster, but aside from Pickens, of course. But I just don't think he really changes much, doesn't move the needle for me personally. And that's kind of what I said when they traded him. And it's just kind of what it's been. I mean, could it be different? Like as he continues to get like another week, another month removed from, surgery and stuff, could he look more like himself? Sure. Okay. More time within the system. Could they look and say like, hey, we need to get this guy more touches, more reps? Sure. Excuse me. But I have no idea, man. What's up, bro? Love the content. Haven't watched Hard Knocks yet. Sorry, guys. I definitely want. I want to because I asked you guys how it was, and like I got like 100 responses, and everybody said it was great. Did you guys mess with it? It seemed like Tomlin got like rave reviews. Like my entire timeline last night is all talking about Tomlin like still in the show and everything, which doesn't really surprise me. What's good? What's good? Yeah, I do have a question about running backs here. I kind of want to hit really quick. From SW48, our running back seems like a good fit for the Steelers. Yeah, Caleb Johnson. I do want to talk about Caleb Johnson because we may do a film room on Caleb Johnson in the membership section this weekend. That's my goal because I just got some film on him and I'm really excited to talk about him. But I see a style back that fits really well within like a wide zone heavy system. I think really Arthur Smith would prefer to get to. Really well built, 225 pounds. A lot of traits that I just really value at the position, man. Vision, patience, contact balance. All three things that really translate to the NFL level. He's ripped some explosive plays this year, but I don't think like the burst through the hole or in the open field or the top end speed is anything special or anything to like write home about. That to me is like typically, a sign that he may not require like a premium draft pick, like a top 50 type player. I just think athletic testing is going to matter for him. But I don't think I think he would be a guy that the Steelers would be really interested in personally. Sorry, I'm like still kind of like recovering from my sickness. Unfortunately, I've had a really rough week. So, free agency priority to replace Ogunjobi. Whoops. Yeah, I mean like Larry O's kind of difficult because like he's another guy that I think you can definitely warrant. Like looking at the contract cap hit and things like that, like, hey, we could probably get similar production from like a cheaper player, right? Probably somebody that if you're planning on starting them, like you'd have to go draft a guy like on day 2 or something like that, or you'd have to go get a veteran, maybe a cheaper guy on the dollar to say like, hey, we think we can get similar type of guy. I mean, Ogunjobi, the contract that they gave him to me was always a little bit egregious. It's probably the most egregious contract. And it's not like a salary cap crippling deal or anything. It's just like he just doesn't warrant that type of deal. But they do like him. So I'm not sure what they'll do with him, but I could definitely see a scenario where like if they do feel like they want more cap space to go make a splash of free agency, maybe that's avenue to do so. So trying to get to these questions here. If the season were to end today, are you re-signing GP? If so, what contract are we talking about? This is going to be like really controversial, and I'm only saying this because I love you guys, and this is a sacred place. And I'm not putting this out on Twitter because I don't want to fight with people. If the season ended right now, today, I would probably just let GP play out his 4th year. Me personally. That's just me. That's what I would do. I would just want to see further developments, not necessarily as a player personally. I think he is obviously a dynamic player, like can do some really solid things. One of the best contested catch guys, one of the best vertical threats that we have in the league right now. I think he's pretty dynamic when he gets the ball in his hands. We've seen him improve drastically after the catch, just in his short time in Pittsburgh. I just think that there are other factors to me based on what I've heard, what you see on the film that would prevent me from like giving this dude like a ton of money right now as we sit here today. Now the Steelers could think completely different than that. They could go out and sign him to $25+ million a season. And like, it's not that I would get on this channel and say like, oh, that's the worst decision of all time, whatever. It's just for me personally, I would probably just let it play out the season. That just is what it is, and kind of see, how he develops from a maturity standpoint. It's just my opinion. Really good question here from Nick. Calvin Austin, the new seam threat seems to be growing in playmaker. Yeah, I mean, like this, like what they're doing with Calvin right now is exactly the stuff that we talked about after they drafted Roman Wilson. Crosses over the middle, crosses up the seam. Like as like a speed slot to stretch the field horizontally, stretch the field vertically. It's all the same stuff. It's just been really cool to see like Calvin used in this way because like he's never really played this type of ball. But I do think Calvin just looks better. I mean, obviously we knew he was really fast, but I think he's gotten better about like understanding how to set up his routes. He's made some really clutch catches. I mean, that touchdown that he caught against Cincinnati, like where it's like catch on collision over the middle of the field. I'll be honest, like I think there are some doubts about like how he's going to play through contact and navigate those in between the hashes types of throws because of his size. And the fact that he made that grab was huge. Could have very well won him the game. Like if things play out a little bit differently, not Cincinnati, Cleveland. If things play out a little bit differently there. So yeah, I mean, I think Calvin, I've said this on the channel, said this in multiple different forums now, but I think he's like a legitimate NFL player. Like he's a wide receiver 4 type who's a above average to good returner, like someone that you absolutely think of as like an auxiliary piece to an offense, a really nice kind of niche player, supporting cast member, whatever like adjective you want to use. I think he's useful. So I think that's good. I just think it kind of sucks. It's like right now you look on their offense and it's like this is like the undoubted wide receiver 2, and I just think he's being miscast in that role. Like he's just not that type of talent. Mainly just because of some of the limitations that he has. But is it possible to dip in free agency to maybe get Higgins from the Bengals? I mean, here's the deal. When the Steelers have when they've targeted guys in free agency, it's typically been guys that have played really well against them in the past, right? Like you guys can think back to like even like obscure signings like Dante Moncrief. Moncrief had like 5 great games in his career, and I think 2 of them came against the Steelers. So Tomlin obviously has a ton of respect for Higgins. He called him Shaq in his press conference. They showed him a lot of respect by putting Porter on him and then kind of like showing more attention like via double teams and a safety over the top to Chase. I don't want to say that it's impossible. Higgins is a really unique player because like when he's on the field, he's a talent, man. Like bigger bodied guy, but moves really well for his size. He's just such a quarterback friendly player. Like if you ever wonder, why this dude's like so coveted and stuff, like why a lot of like film people love like Chase, love Higgins. They're just so quarterback friendly. Like he comes back to the ball. He's really difficult to like work through because of his size at the catch point. He'll go over the middle. He could beat press. I mean, he has like the characteristics of what you want, like a wide receiver 1. The issue with Higgins, like, and I've always said this, like the only issue with him is that, like, I think he 100% can handle like a larger target share. He's proven that, like, when Chase has been out in years past, he's exploded. He's had big games, so he could definitely do those things. It's just Higgins misses 4 to 5 games a season with the soft tissue injury. So, like, that's the question with the contract stuff. Is like he's going to get paid in the offseason. Somebody's going to give him a bag. But you're going to either have to you just have to be really honest with yourself. Like there's a good chance that we're signing this dude for 25, 27 million per season, and he's only going to play 12 games a season. Like that just may be the reality. So where's Roman Wilson? I have no idea, man. He's not practicing though. So I think Roman's season is pretty much over. I think. Doubt they go O-line early. Yeah, I don't really see O-line early. I could see them taking a guard in the middle rounds, or maybe even a tackle. But I don't think that's going to be a big bright priority. Derek Harmon from Oregon. I have watched Harmon. I haven't watched the other 2 guys you mentioned. Oregon actually has a couple dudes that I'm really interested in. Not as much for the Steelers. Is his name Jordan Birch? Is that the other dude from Oregon? He popped for me over the summer like crazy, and he's a really solid player, man. But yeah, defensive line like seems like I'm not as far into the class as like a lot of other people that do this, the draft stuff. The draft for me is like I'll try to get to the top like 5 players or something like that at like different positions that I'm interested in or that I think could like potentially be needs for the Steelers in the summer. And then like as the college football season goes on, like I can't dive into as much like college all 22 as I really like to. Whereas like the other like full-time draft guys that are just doing draft year round aren't covering like a team or anything like that can really dive into the weeds. Whereas like I can't really start that until the Steelers are eliminated from the playoffs, which just kind of makes it difficult. And that's the reason why like I will only scout 125 players. Like I think I got to like 130 something last year. Like I can't get to as many players as a lot of these other guys do. So would be nice, but what's good, man? Brock Bowers is a good example of taking the best available. Yeah. Bowers is a player, man. He has been fantastic. I think he probably should win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Is that a hot take? So I think that's probably not a hot take. I think he probably should. Daniels, if Daniels picks it back up, I know he played well last week. He would probably have been my guess. Had a couple rough weeks like after he was coming back from injury. I think that's probably, I don't know. Bowers has as good of a case though. Like that dude's gonna go well over 1,000 yards as a rookie as a tight end. It's pretty crazy. He's not really a true tight end. Like they're using him like he's their number one option on offense, and he's producing. So pretty crazy. Injuries could be a problem from Calvin. Yeah, it's really tough, man. Because it just looks every time Calvin gets hit, it looks like he's in a car crash. I feel really bad for him. But Russ was kind of putting him in some dangerous spots a couple weeks or last week. It was tough. But Calvin's a tough dude. He hasn't missed a ton of time this year, obviously. Hopefully, the concussion thing is a little bit scary. Those are always really, really, tough injuries. Brian, props on your film study of Ben Skoranic's been a solid and hard scheme. It's really funny because like anytime Skowronek does anything, like if he's even in the game, like thousands of people, or not thousands, like dozens of people are like mentioning me on Twitter. Like, do you see 15 in the game right now? Like people, after I think it was after Najee's touchdown this past week where he like decleated that safety on the backside of the run. There was like 3 people that went to YouTube on my channel and like commented on that video. That's like, well over a month old. And like, usually videos like that don't get like hardly any traffic. I mean, we're talking about, but I do think like that is what kind of makes like my channel unique a little bit, is like we try to focus on some of the more like deeper dive stuff like that, where we highlight some practice squad guys that we think could be good fits. And it turns out like he has been useful. I just think that Skowronek is like, I think he can play the role that I think that they've been trying to like moonlight Connor Hayward into. Like, I just think that he's a more useful player than that. So, obviously he's very much a supporting cast member, not someone that you want as like your wide receiver 3 or anything like that. But like with the contributions on special teams, like he has a place on a roster, and that was why I liked the signing when it happened. So, get Minkah's plan center field prevented on deep throws every time he's throwing his completion is EP per target. So like I mentioned this a little bit earlier with Dante, but like coverage statistics in general are just they're always really tough for me personally, because I think even on schemes like the Steelers where you can pretty much, I mean, it's really difficult. There's a very rare time where like the Steelers are running a coverage where I like can't really necessarily tell like what the coverage call is. So the responsibilities, the landmarks and stuff like that. It's just zone coverage in general. Like there's so many moving parts with that, man. Like it really is. Like sometimes like guys, a lot of those like coverage metrics or coverage statistics are literally just like next gen stats and stuff. It's really just closest defender. So it's like, is he the closest defender because like someone else blew a coverage? Is he the closest defender because like, of him playing, like, for example, if you're playing like a curl flat, for example, in like a cover 3 scheme, like, and you give up a 4-yard hitch route on the outside, like that gets charged to your metrics for like giving up a completion, giving up a first down, like, or first down catch or something like that. But in the NFL, like there's a no cover zone. Like you don't cover in zone coverage, like less than 5 yards down the field. And like those catches still get charted in all of those, like PFF, next gen stats, everything. They still chart those as like bad plays. for the defense. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know how much I make of that. I do think that Minkah was playing good ball like the first half of the season, and really up until the bye week. I think in recent weeks, I don't think it's been as clean. I thought he took a bad angle on the Chase Brown run. Chase Brown's really fast. That's another kind of caveat with that. I don't think he played well at all against the Browns. Granted, like there was a couple plays that I absolutely thought that he should make against the Browns. That he just didn't. Now the weather is probably plays some part in that, but like again, both teams had to play in it. Whatever. I didn't think that was a good game at all from his perspective. The Steelers really up until last week. I haven't checked the numbers because they did give up a lot of completions in between the numbers, in between the hashes against the Bengals, but they were the league's best defense. Really across the board, pretty much every metric you could find at like throws over the middle. And like he has a big part of that. Queen has a big part of that. I know those guys didn't have a great game against the Bengals. Really, the back seven in general did not play very well at all. Zone spacing was terrible. They kind of got caught trying to do a lot of creative stuff that I think a lot of people have asked them to do. It's just Burrow was just better on a lot of those plays. So I'm not necessarily worried about Minkah. I do understand like the frustrations that he hasn't been coming up with the splash plays. I get it. He's an expensive player. He's not necessarily producing like one right now in the box score. I just think that it would be great to see him around the ball a little bit more. But I think a lot of people really coming into the season were really excited. I think it was almost universally loved that they were getting back to playing like quote unquote Minkah ball, like he called it. Like he was going to be in the post. Like that was what everybody wanted. Nobody wanted him near the line of scrimmage. Nobody wanted him in the slot. And now that he's back there, he's not near the ball as much. And like this is the thing with like paying safeties and why safety isn't really necessarily viewed as a premium position around the league is like they're just not involved in as many plays as like an edge rusher is, where you're involved in pretty much every play. So it's just different. The one thing I will say is like in the event that like I've seen like some people say that like, oh, like they need to move on. Not saying you're suggesting that, James, but like they need to move on, like they're paying too much money, da. Okay, but if you're going to play cover 3 and you're really static and like really old school and like your spot drop stuff, going to play single high like on 77% of your snaps or something like that, you better go get a free safety that can run because it's going to be bombs away if you don't. So it's a lot tougher than it looks is all I would say with that. So do you think TJ will win Defensive Player of the Year? Probably. It's a really weak class or like year for I feel like Defensive Player of the Year. Like a lot of the guys that are really producing aren't necessarily like bigger names or on like for example, like Trey Hendrickson. They did a good job shutting him down, which I'm actually going to talk about in the film room tomorrow, hopefully. They did a good job shutting him down last Sunday, but like his numbers have been outrageous, but he's on like the league's worst defense. So it's like he's not going to win it. Garrett is on a team that's going to win like 4 or 5 games. Like he's probably not going to win it. The other guys I think like would deserve consideration, like just based on how they played this year, is like guys like Nick Bonito, something like that. He's been outrageous. I don't think he's been Defensive Player of the Year caliber, but he's on a really good defense. Denver has had a breakout season, guy that I really like come draft time, but like he will never even end up on like a betting board because, nobody knows who that guy is. And then just like Dexter Lawrence got hurt. TJ, I don't even think is having like one of his better seasons in the last like 5 years, but like he could definitely win it. He's been very good, obviously, taking a lot of attention away from other guys, but let's see here. Save the money on T and draft a wide receiver. I mean, look, hey. I mean, it's easy to say draft a wide receiver when we kind of said the same thing after they traded Deontay last year. Like, hey, like it's cool. Trade Deontay, no big deal. Just get a receiver in the draft. And then they waited until the 3rd round to do it. And they took a slot receiver who, it's not really necessarily what they needed, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that spending money on T is like the best allocation of resources. I could see them doing that in a way. Ethan, I haven't watched a ton of Kyron Lacy. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the stream. But you guys are really big Kyron Lacy fans. I promise I've got you guys. I will go watch Kyron Lacy this weekend when I get a chance. I will do it. I've seen him play live. I think he's an interesting player. I just haven't studied him. I haven't really seen a lot of talk about him in like draft circles and stuff on social media either. Surprising thing, Siaka Ike get released so quickly by the Browns. Poor man's Ogunjobi. No, I mean, to me, it's always been a big red flag. Like when a guy's got like weight concerns and they come into the combine looking like he did. So I just don't know. Ika was an interesting prospect to me when he was like he started out at LSU and then like I watched him a little bit in the summer of like going into his senior year or his last year in college. His production wasn't there, I don't think, the final year, but he just like has always had a problem with like his weight and stuff. So if anything, like Ika, I think his body type suggests he's a nose tackle. But if I remember correctly, I didn't really think that he did a great job in terms of like taking on doubles and things like that. Even though I want to get Keanu Benton to 3 tech. That's my goal. That'll be like my lifelong career defining, if you want to call this career defining achievement, will be to get Keanu Benton to 3 tech instead of nose tackle. Any chance to Steelers go quarterback in the draft? I think they could draft one. I don't think that this is the draft to take one in the first round. I broke down the quarterbacks. If you guys are interested in that, I did a video on like my early impressions of the quarterback class, but I just don't. I don't love the class in general. I'm probably not gonna like as of right now. I don't have a true first round grade on anyone in the class. It's just not a good group. Could they take somebody to kind of mold and maybe on day 2 or something like that? That potential for sure. The problem is like even like the day 2 caliber quarterbacks that I like would be interested in, they're probably gonna get bumped up in this class and go earlier than they probably should. Now we'll see. Maybe it's like the 20. I don't think it's as bad as the 2022 draft. But maybe it's like that where like the NFL is like, hey, we're not taking these guys in the first round. Like we're just not doing it. Sanders, Ward will probably go early. After that, we're gonna, wait, whatever. And then I would probably be interested in like some guys like Jalen Milroe would be a guy like if I could get him on day 2, I'd be really intrigued by the tools. Just because those are the type of things that I would want to work with, get him in my offense. But a lot of these guys have really interesting decisions in terms of like, I think in the NFL right now, you're probably, in college football, you're probably better off like maximizing your eligibility, capitalizing on NIL, and make sure that you're as fully finished of a product as you can possibly be. Because I just don't think the NFL is not a developmental league at any position. That's what I think oftentimes gets misconstrued or overrated in during the time of the draft. It's like, oh, you draft and develop this guy. Yes, but like a lot of the development really falls on the player. So like that comes down to like mental wiring, like having good assistant coaches and stuff like that is good. But like it's not like these guys have a lot of time to go through like specific technique stuff and like show you how to be a better player at your position during the season. That time is really spent on like game planning, week specific type of stuff, opponent specific type of stuff. You're not showing guys how to become a better pass rusher or use their hands, or for example, or be more accurate with their fundamentals. Like you're not drilling that a lot. During the season, there's just not a lot of time. There's not that much time. So that's my rant about quarterbacks. I think if you have the chance to stay in school, if you're not a fully finished product and you don't feel like you can go out there, and do really good things, or you don't feel like you're guaranteed to be like a top 10 pick or top half of the first round, I would stay in school if I could. So let's see. Try to get through a couple more of these. I've only got about 10 minutes and I got to hop off here. So get what you got to get in. If you guys could, like we got 90 people in here. If you guys all could, please make sure that you go like the video for me. Just helps get this thing out to as many people as possible. Really helps the algorithm. And I really appreciate it. I've had a really good time, like, hopping on here, talking ball with you all. So I appreciate you guys jumping on and, interacting with me as well. Do you notice many of those checkdowns? Frazier blocked his guy to the side. I'm thinking Russ. The checkdowns were great because like what the Bengals were doing, and this is what I'm going to talk about in the film room tomorrow, but I'll go ahead and spoil that. Not that you guys haven't already seen it, but the Bengals just were playing a lot of split field coverage. So they're playing a lot of cover 2, but their Tampa droppers were getting so much depth at the snap. They were basically bailing out automatically to like 10, 12 yards. So one of the best ways to attack Tampa. They were running like a lot of like all go type concepts, and they were just getting the back out over the ball. It's a good way to attack that type of defense. Now against most defenses, those are like 4 or 5 yard plays that keep you on schedule. Against the Bengals, who have linebackers that legitimately can't move anymore, like Jermaine Pratt, those turn into like explosive runs. So it's a credit to Russ for like playing quickly and understanding where the ball needs to go and how they can take advantage of some of the weaknesses of the Bengals, for sure. And I thought Frazier had a great game in the run game. Like he was balling. So really nice bounce back for him because he really hasn't played. He really hasn't had like very many. I mean, I would say the Browns game was probably like his first like bad game of the season. To be honest with you, I can't remember another one, but it was just nice to see like him bounce back with such a strong performance. After that week. So, who's your running back two after Johnson for the Steelers? Man, I don't know like Steelers specific. I mean, there's just so many good backs in this class. Like Amarion Hampton is a guy that I could see them potentially being interested in. He's more of like a downhill type of runner. I don't necessarily love him as much in like a wide zone system, but um, he has like kind of the build that they typically go for. I know Nick Singleton has some fans at Penn State. I haven't watched like his film, but I've seen a lot of him over the years. He's an intriguing player as well. Seems like he's kind of coming on a little bit recently too. Let me see if I got anything from Twitter that I know that I absolutely have to get to here. I think I got to pretty much everything I had bookmarked that I absolutely needed to get to. 10 different people caught classes. I would be careful with that. They need a wide receiver too. This offense would be a lot better. If they had like a wide receiver too, like for sure. Like it'd be a lot more dynamic. It'd be less volatile. I think the big thing with the Steelers, this kind of like what I can end with, honestly. But the big thing with the Steelers is I think they've surpassed expectations. They've surpassed my expectations, like what a lot of people I feel like in the media and the football landscape have really expected of them of this season. Now it's about like you kind of have to change those a little bit now with where they're at. They're 9-3, firmly in the playoff discussion. They're going to be there. But I think, really in terms of like translating this to the postseason when you're playing up against better competition, that's where like it's more matchup based and like where your weaknesses tend to get like exposed a lot. Now, hopefully that doesn't actually end up happening for the Steelers. We know we want them to win every single game, but we'll see how it all plays out. I think in the offseason, though, wide receiver 2 is like a non-negotiable top need. Like you have to put a significant kind of bullseye on addressing that. And hopefully, I mean, we said this last off season too. So hopefully, it doesn't, it doesn't happen again, but hopefully they get that figured out. And even though this wide receiver class isn't like fantastic by any stretch of the imagination, there will be guys that are going to be worth like monitoring, guys that will be, worth taking to get in the draft process. There also be, I'm not a huge fan of like the free agent class, like when looking at it, but like some more guys will get released and things like that. I mean, Higgins is the big one. I feel like he's going to be kind of the, the bell of the ball a little bit. So he's probably going to be super expensive, especially, given what he's done this year when he's been on the field. So as always, I really appreciate you guys watching. Really appreciate the continued support on the channel. Thank you guys. Brad, I'm just saying, like, I'm more so like I'm not talking about the Cincinnati game. I'm talking about more like a big picture viewpoint. It's good. I don't want to take anything away from like Russ's performance against the Bengals, anything like that. But the Bengals are not fielding an NFL defense right now. Like we just have to be very honest with ourselves. They're playing a lot of players that do not need to be on an NFL roster. That's just the God's honest truth, to be honest with you. I think that's kind of what I was saying about expectations though. And just like what really matters in terms of like projecting the rest of the season. It's really about like, we know the Steelers can beat up on bad teams. Like, and they've even been better. They've been good this season against like playoff teams or like teams with winning records. We're going to find out a lot about this team when they play Baltimore here in a couple weeks, when they play Philly, when they play Kansas City. Those type of matchups are the ones where I think like not having a true wide receiver 2 would be even more helpful. Like you don't really need a lot to, punch up on the Bengals right now. It's just, they're pretty bad. So, sorry, Tonio, I see you got in here. I haven't watched Hard Knocks yet, but maybe on like Friday's or Saturday's preview or something like that, I will give a quick like 30-second rundown if I'm able to get to Hard Knocks before then. But I haven't watched it yet. I know you guys are like really hyped up about it though. I'm glad you enjoyed it for sure. But again, I really appreciate you guys support everything. Cole, thank you for reading the article. Yeah, I wrote an article today about, I think that the Steelers have another star pass rusher. I think Nick Herbig is like beyond good. Like, I don't think he's just like a good like role player or a great number 3 edge rusher. Like, I think he's like a star pass rusher. I went back and watched this film over the past couple of days. So I'm just like, he's just so good. Like he's like nobody's been able to block him. He's been beaten up on some of the best tackles in the league. It's a really good it's a good thing to have, man. The Steelers trio of edge rushers right now is just an embarrassment of riches. So if you guys are interested in that, you can go check out my Twitter. I just posted the link to that. All of my written work, if you guys are ever interested in that, is always like linked in all the descriptions of the video. Again, if you guys are interested in even more like content, stuff like that, film rooms, I know there were a lot of questions today about NFL draft stuff. All the NFL draft stuff, film room wise, is going to be in the membership kind of section, and that is like a way for me to kind of provide more content for the people that like really are after that type of stuff. But at the same time, like I'm just gonna go ahead and put this out there. I cannot post college all 22 on my channel. It's just not worth it to me. It's not a good thing for me to risk just because of the copyright issues and everything like that. I will do, like, after the Steelers draft these players, I'll do like videos and like film rooms, just like we've done every single year. We will do those for sure. But I'm not going to, like, for prospect wise, all of those like film rooms will be behind the membership channel. So if you guys are interested in that, there's already stuff back there. There's a Cam Warren film room. And then, like, I pretty much am posting like one additional kind of like bonus film room, Steelers related, NFL draft related, whatever, for members over there. So if you're interested in more content, the link is in the description. It's the price of a small coffee a month. I wanted to make it as affordable as possible, basically just to pay me for my time, but for you guys to also get additional content, more perks, everything like that, and to make it worth it for everybody. So again, really appreciate the continued support for the channel. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. I'm hoping to have a film room up at some point tomorrow, maybe this time tomorrow. Just talking about some of the stuff that I liked from the Steelers offense against the Bengals. And then hopefully we'll be looking at Caleb Johnson. I am hoping I'm going to be able to get that posted for Friday / the weekend. Got the preview for the Browns this weekend as well. So I'm really excited about that. Lots of content coming. So I will check you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your week. Peace and love.